What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the best witch hunter build in Path of Exile 2. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of the setup. Then I will explain what skill gems and skill links should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both the leveling and the mid game. And then finally we will go over the passive skill tree, stats, your skill rotations, and even what charm should you use, so we will be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you want to see this build on the website, then click my link in this video's description. This setup is very unique because we are going to be freezing enemies with the permafrost bolts, which will give us frost fires, so then we will be able to drop explosive grenades that can detonate, and with the explosive shots we will do massive amounts of damage. This build is great against bosses and other large enemy groups, as we can CC the enemy while our fuse is going on, and then we can detonate our AoE skills and clear anything and everything in our way. So let's move over to the build. When you get to it, you want to pick the Witch Hunter Ascendancy, but if you're leveling, then the basic mercenary class will work as well. And first we have our skills. So for the main spell we have the crossbow shot with no support gems. Then second we got the permafrost bolts with support gems like the glaciation, then the ice bite and also the deep freeze. We chose this skill because we want to push hard into the freezing effect. So then once we freeze our enemies, we can then drop a huge ignite on them with explosive grenade and do a huge amount of DPS. Then next we got the explosive grenade with support gems like the frostfire, concentrated effect, primal arraignment, eternal flame and searing flame. This skill just got a huge buff in 80% physical to fire damage converter. So this will give us big ignites on the bosses and provide our build with fast clearing speed. Next we have explosive shot with support gems like the wildfire and the nimble reload. Then next we have the herald of the ash with support gems such as the clarity, vitality and precision. Then for flash grenade we got one support gem called brutality. Then for high velocity rounds we have the scattered shot and double barrel. And then finally for our galvanic shards we got support gems like the lightning infusion and pierce. As most of our build is made around the permafrost bolts and grenades, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their damage, while the rest of our powerful filler skills we can use until our main rotation comes back up. Next let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we can use up until about level 25. So first off we have the high velocity rounds with double barrel and the scattered shot. Then next we have the flash grenade with the second wind. Then third we got the galvanic shards with the pierced and lightning infusion. And then finally we have the Ripfire Ballista with brutality and lockdown. This is your basic setup up until you get explosive shot, which happens from about level 22 or 25. While leveling we will be using the high velocity rounds and flash grenade for single target, and then the galvic shards with the lightning infusion and pierce for AoE damage. As I said, you're able to get explosive shot at level 22, which then will open up the door to detonate your grenades. Also, once you get a good crossbow that has some combination of flat physical damage, increased physical damage and flat firing damage, then you should probably go ignite. Next up we have our passive skill tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, but actually it's quite simple. A character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more from completing certain quests. In extremely simple terms, at the top we have the intelligence section, which focuses on spell damage, summoning and elemental damage. Then we have the bottom right, which is dexterity section and is more focused on ranged combat, evasion and speed. And then finally we have the bottom left, the strength section, which is more melee and defense oriented. Then next we have the passive nodes, and they are split into two categories. The small passives that grant minor bonuses such as small increase to attack speed, spell damage, melee damage or attributes. And then second we have the notable passives. These are slightly larger passive points that grant greater bonuses than the smaller ones, but they have stats on them that are often closely related to the small passives leading up to them. So think of these as checkpoints to work towards. And then on top of this we have the third passive point, but which is not entirely compared to the two others. So for the third one we have the keystones. These are build changing, character defining points that often provide a massive amount of power with a downside. But these downsides can be reduced or worked towards. So we want to start at the projectile damage node and go like this until we get these three notable nodes. Then next we work towards here and get these two more nodes. Then afterwards go like this and get that entire right side. Then now keep going down until this circle, and then we take the right and get that whole right side, starting with instant reload and all the way up till wasting. Then now we come back to this path and get that whole circle. And then from here we just keep going down and take whatever node you want, as long as you follow this path exactly in the way that you see here. To simplify my decision making, then basically we want to prioritize instant reload first, because reload speed will give us the biggest build upgrade, so we want to get it first. Then also, once you have explosive grenade and explosive shot skills, then start taking the grenade node and grenade reload speed. Then next, our path down to the crossbow wheel at the bottom is made for more damage, and the leatherbound's gauntlet and the general's binding is for more defense. And then finally, for the rest of our nodes, they are meant for once you go ignite, which will increase our damage and other ailments. In PoE 2, earning skill points take a lot of hard work, so it will be wise not to spend your points recklessly. You can of course reset your passive points later, but only at a cost, so following a specific setup is extremely useful. Also, understanding the passive skill tree can make or break your character, so investing more time in this specific section will definitely upgrade your knowledge of the game. But overall, if you are following my setup, then make sure to not deviate from it, because some of the decisions that I make might not make sense at first, but is going to pay off later. So please use this exact same path as I have right here, and don't forget to check this video's description to find the link for this website, and this should make this easier for you to follow this tree. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the advanced Dayat crossbow, with stats like the critical, speed and min and max physical damage. For prefixes we have a load and additional bolt, increased physical damage, add to physical damage and add to fire damage. Then for helmet we have the shielded helm, with stats like the armor and evasion. Then for chest we have the advanced explorer armor with the armor and evasion. Then for belt we have the mail belt with reduced flask charges. Then for gloves we got the bolstered mitts with armor. Then for boots we are using the stacked sabotons with the armor and evasion. Then for our first ring we got the ruby ring with fire resistance, while on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance. And then finally for the amulet we get the jade amulet with dexterity. As the game just launched, so this is a starter setup, which should be more of an example with stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon will be the most important upgrade to look for, so prioritize flat damage of any type. Specifically, the physical roll will be the most important, as your skills themselves will do a lot of conversion. Also, once you start investing more points into the passive skill tree, then you will want to look for stats like the flat physical and flat fire damage. Attack speed is also helpful as it improves your reload speed. For defenses, make sure you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so look for increased armor on gloves to get the best use of our leather-bound gauntlet node, which gives 1 evasion per every 1 armor, and then go with armor/evasion hybrid for all the other items. As far as getting this gear goes, gearing up in the campaign is relatively straightforward. Most players will focus on increasing their damage output and survivability. And at this point, there's no best gear or specific item that you should farm, as the campaign is just a brief introduction to the game itself, and you will be getting better gear left and right. However, once you reach the early stages of mapping, which should happen around level 65, it's crucial that you start mainly focusing on farming Atlas of the Worlds, and just keep repeating doing maps until you reach tier 16. If you're looking for a detailed guide on the best gear and how to farm them after the campaign, then watch my dedicated gearing guide video. Then on top of this, we need to quickly look into the charms and flasks. So you'll unlock charms during Act 1 and by completing the campaign. These charms act as a passive node, by giving you a bit of breathing room against specific ailments. Charms are incredibly useful as by having the right one equipped at the right time can save you from dying. Even in the early game when you're fighting bosses like the Beara of the Root and Pack, her ice attacks can do a lot of damage if you're not prepared. So if you're struggling with certain bosses, then look into what damage type they're using, and then use that specific charm to increase your resistance. For me personally, I prefer the Ameta's charm, to use it when I take chaos damage. Then the Antidote charm for when I become poisoned, and then finally the Topaz charm for when I take lightning damage. But as I said, which one you choose will depend on the enemies that you are fighting, so feel free to experiment and mix and match. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So for bossing on large rare enemies, we want to start the rotation by using the permafrost bolts, which freezes them and gives us the full bonus from the frost fire. Then afterwards, we drop explosive grenades, and either way wait for the fuse, or hit them with the detonator skill, which does not have a consume freeze support on it. And for this, in this rotation, I'm using the explosive shot. And then from here, we want to finish it off with the high velocity rounds and or galvanic shards. And then the rest of our skills are filler spells, which we can use until we get back our main DPS rotation.